The story begins in 1945, on the last day of the Second World War, above the abyssal depths of the Sea of Japan. The main character, the kamikaze pilot, Koichi Shikishima, apparently has technical problems with his plane and lands urgently on the island of Odo. Experienced maintenance personnel immediately took action to overhaul the aircraft, but strangely found no anomaly on the aircraft. The dubious but methodical chief mechanic, Sosaku Tachibana, then takes the time to speak with the young man, while being convinced that Shikishima has fled his duty. Lonely among the soldiers on this magnificent island, he nevertheless notices mysterious dead fish floating on the surface of the water. At nightfall, the alarms sound for a long time, announcing an imminent danger, a threat that is rapidly approaching. In traumatic terror, a gigantic dinosaur-like creature, Godzilla, attacks the base, forcing the soldiers to fall back in defense. Shikishima, for his part, managed to climb into his fighter plane and have the monster in his sights ready to shoot, but, intimidated by its imposing size, could not bring himself to pull the trigger. A shot is then unfortunately fired by a nervous soldier, and disaster strikes. Now perceiving them as a threat, the monster destroys them with its powerful mouth, cruelly tearing them to pieces. At dawn, a shocked Koichi discovers in the utter desolation the bodies of many men, possibly dead by his betrayal, and he also notes that Tachibana is the only other survivor. Then, on the deck of a military ship where soldiers are lying, slumped, ashamed of defeat, Tachibana appears before him and, in controlled anger, gives him a mysterious envelope which he keeps preciously. We are now in the harsh winters of Tokyo in 1946. Shikishima returns home and discovers the catastrophic poverty which is hitting the country. Suddenly, he is recognized by a tearful woman, Sumiko, who lets out her anger by holding traitors like him responsible for the defeat of Japan and the death of these sons. Going among the rubble, she also confides to him that his parents were killed in the bombing of Tokyo. In the freezing cold of the alleys of these ruins where survivors who have no other choice but to have to wage war against poverty, Koichi crosses paths with a woman named Noriko Oishi, fleeing in all haste, men chasing her. She hastily entrusts him with a newborn before disappearing on all legs, but he ends up finding her, and she is surprised by his ethics because he chose not to abandon his baby by this extreme coldness. In all generosity, he offers them a good hot meal and learns during their conversation that she is not the mother of his baby who is called Akiko, but that like him, her heart has guided her actions for the good of a fragile being. The next day at dawn, he is greeted by Sumiko, who noticed the presence of the woman and the child. The bereaved mother also shows empathy and shows affection for them by taking care of the child, before leaving by giving them food intended solely for the survival of the little orphaned baby. We are now in the fertile spring rains of March 1946. The trio evolves through daily concerns and apparently have found a makeshift family. Plagued by survivor's guilt and, in order to provide for the child, Koichi manages to find the perilous job paid in advance as a minesweeper, and, despite the legitimate concern that Noriko shows, this presents itself as the only subsistence solution of the moment. His first assignment leads him to meet a certain Kenji Noda, a former naval weapons engineer, as well as a crew led by the intrepid young captain Akitsu. After a short time at sea, the dredger dragged by the ships soon caught a dangerously drifting mine. The obvious clumsiness of the assigned artilleryman, who fails to blow it up, gives Koichi the opportunity to shine by showing off his exceptional military ability. He hits the mark on the first try. A few months later, in June 1946, the American Army carried out extremely powerful nuclear tests on the Bikini Atoll, where Godzilla absorbed the strong radioactivity emitted. As time passes, Koichi, Noriko, and little Akiko live their family life to the fullest and gain enough money to the point of having their house renovated. The warm dinners they have with their work colleagues are full of good humor. The story of their meetings particularly moves the audience, who show them a deep love. But that year, Godzilla mutated greatly and grew due to the United States' nuclear tests on Bikini Atoll. He savagely destroyed several American warships before heading towards Japan. Due to tensions with the Soviet Union, General Douglas MacArthur sent decommissioned ships of the Imperial Japanese Navy in response. In May 1947, off the island of Ogasawara, Shikishima and the minesweeper crew were observing and looking worriedly at the wrecks of severely damaged military ships. Koichi's eagle eye also notices the same dead fish on the surface of the water that preceded Godzilla's attack months earlier. While the military is organizing and preparing a possible defense, the monster suddenly bursts out of the water and quickly engulfs one of the ships. Without waiting, they release a first mine, whose powerful explosion provokes the anger of the animal, which immediately chases them. A second mine releases a thunderous explosion, which spreads harmlessly around Godzilla. And there, a third attempt proves to be the right one, since Koichi's precise shots cause the charge to jump into the gaping maw of the legendary sea monster, seriously injuring him. Their joy is short-lived, because the monster regenerates quickly and continues its charge. Suddenly, the heavy cruiser Takao emits heavy artillery fire which hits it several times. Everyone believes him to be dead, but strangely, the seabed lights up with a sparkling glow, and Godzilla releases his atomic heat ray, which ends the battle. After a short stay in the hospital, Shikishima is back in Tokyo. Faced with Noriko's sustained questions, he finally ends up telling her about his past as a kamikaze, the attack that took place, and his previous encounter with this creature, Godzilla, against whom they can do nothing. Faced with his disconcerting dismay, the young woman knew how to find the right words and gestures to support him and help him through this difficult ordeal. A few days later, a Japanese Navy battleship on surveillance spotted not far from the coast the dorsal peaks of the monster, splitting the surface of the water. In Ginza, the alarms sound, and the radio warns a population already running at full speed in the streets of this very populated city. Heavy footsteps shake the ground, and the creature then begins to rampage on the infrastructure among panicked fugitives. The murderous attack continues to where Noriko is working. The train she was on was then violently attacked by the enraged animal, but the courageous woman managed to escape at the last minute by jumping into the port waters. The nightmare continues in the streets where the KO is omnipresent. The buildings are pulverized, and the population has many innocent victims. Noriko comes close to death and is found in extremity by Shikishima, who saves her and flees with her. Trying by all means to put an end to this human disaster, the army shows its power, and the Cheeto Type 4 medium tanks bombard the Titan with heavy fire, which is hit in several places. Before the terrified eyes of the stunned population, Godzilla's dorsal crest lights up. Noriko courageously sacrificed herself to save Shikishima by pushing him into an alley, exposing herself to death. Devastated body and soul by his loss, Koichi tearfully swears to take revenge by any means necessary. The scale of the losses caused by the attack are immeasurable. The city, which had barely recovered from the damage caused by the Second World War, must, once again, rebuild this devastated field of ruins. However, revenge-loving, former naval engineer Kenji Noda plans to destroy Godzilla by surrounding him with Freon tanks, which, once broken in the water, would sink to a depth of 1,500 meters, leaving the resulting pressure crush the monster. If it fails, balloons will be inflated beneath Godzilla to force him to the surface, killing him by explosive decompression. To implement his plan, the wise man took care to recruit very experienced men because most of them are former members of the Navy. Among his souls bruised deep in their hearts, Captain Tatsuo Hotta delivers a poignant, powerful motivational speech that galvanizes the spirits and definitively validates the revanchist mission that they swore to achieve. In the evening, a crisis meeting was held at Shikishima's home, where, together in pain with the entire mine clearance team, the thoughts all come together to find an effective strategy likely to definitively eliminate Godzilla. In this extremely tense atmosphere, a resolute Shikishima, who now accepts his destiny, undeniably imposes himself by offering to procure a fighter plane to pound the monster from the air. The next day, the solution was unearthed among Kenji Noda's relations. A formidable fighter, Kyushu J7W Shinden, was miraculously found, but the aircraft was broken down and pinned to the ground. As a revelation, there is no doubt that the man who perfectly embodies the solution to this problem cannot be other than the mechanic Sosaku Tachibana, with whom he had already fought Godzilla on the island of Odo. His desperate search to find him at all costs takes him to the offices of the Army Archives, and his insistence, his tenacity, and the persuasion he shows do not succeed, but, like a call from the heart, leaves an indelible trace, an echo that resonates in the thoughts of all the people who heard his request. Then one evening on his way home, he is knocked out by an individual who is none other than Tachibana himself. The latter questions him violently. As an atonement for his past guilt, and to convince him, he finds the right words, the keys, the issues of this coming battle, which in the event of victory, can reconcile them both with themselves. The former chief mechanic comes to the country, accompanied by his best men, to carry out the necessary repairs on the Kyushu J7W Shinden. Before the final battle, the days pass and strategies are scrupulously refined. Everyone is ready to sacrifice themselves for those they love. Koichi, for his part, spends his last special moments with little Akiko and will not forget to leave a letter, as well as all his savings, to his neighbor Sumiko, who is now responsible for taking care of the child. Tachibana and his teammates have completed the repairs. The device is ready for combat, or Shikishima plans to fly into Godzilla's mouth by detonating an explosive charge to try to destroy the monster from the inside. A few days later, vigilant observers saw the warning beacons activated. They identified the dead fish which always preceded the arrival of the monster, and heard the screaming alarms which put the armed forces present on a war footing. Then, the wide-eyed combatants see a ship weighing several tons flying through the air, before crashing noisily to the ground. Suddenly the water is split by the dorsal crest of Godzilla, who attacks. At this moment, the kamikaze Shikishima performs his final salute before taking off aboard the heavily armed Kyushu J7W Shinden. This time, he laughs before facing death itself, flying over the gazes of the mechanics determined to put an end to this threat. Like divine punishment, Godzilla's heavy footsteps now shake the ground and announce an imminent destructive apocalypse for this land and its inhabitants. The attacks of the valiant Shikishima machine gun him relentlessly to lure him into the trap set, faithful to the strategy led by Captain Tatsuo Hotta. All the ships get into combat position, and this time, all are united, forming the tip of the sharp spear which has only one objective: defeat this titan once and for all. However, Godzilla's dorsal crest sparkles with ominous glows, and the monster destroys unmanned destroyers with its fearsome thermal ray. Taking advantage of the time necessary for the Titan to regenerate its plasma, the two remaining ships approach, and with the significant air support from Koichi, envelop it in the buoys, which trap it by dragging it into the abyssal depths of the Sea of Japan. Godzilla is successfully sent to a depth of more than 1,500 meters, and the balloons actually raise him to the surface in order to create the decompression supposed to kill him. There, faces beam when a numerous armada of ships towing a boat stuffed with explosives arrive in the direction of the beast. A fleet of tugboats helps, and the monster is brought to the surface. However, still alive and enraged, Godzilla prepares to destroy all the ships with his newfound thermal ray. But Shikishima flies the explosive-packed plane into Godzilla's mouth and remembers Tachibana, imploring him to use the ejection seat, abandon his survivor's guilt, and choose to live. The plane then explodes, destroying Godzilla's head and causing his body to be mercilessly torn apart by its energy. In deafening silence, the entire crew salutes alone in this unique moment of deliverance as Shikishima parachutes down, having chosen to live. A warm cheer reserved for the heroes that they are greets them when they disembark on the Port Quay, and there, Shikishima, very moved, receives a telegram which instructs him to go quickly to the hospital with Akiko. Running and panting, they miraculously find Noriko, who is certainly injured, but who survived the nuclear explosion by saving her life. And meanwhile, a living piece of Godzilla's body sinks into the ocean, but begins to regenerate. Thank you for enjoying this exciting film with us. Don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell. See you soon on Story Time.